everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. My name's Brian Vitale. With me today, I have Adam Vitale.
Hello.
Josh Torres.
I'm a changed man.
And James Galizio.
Hey, folks.
Yeah, no Chow today. He's just out busy with other things. So we're back to the actual Tetra in Tetracast tonight. Josh, why are you a changed man?
This week, admittedly, I didn't play many games. Like there was very few small little things here and there, nothing really worth mentioning. But I was like, I'm kind of like in this weird state where like I really don't have any like big assignments right now, and there's not really any like immediate games like that I'm like really wanting to chew on. So I was like, there's like this weird little gap that I don't really get that often. I was like, what do I do? And so this season in anime shows, like, for the first time in a while, Bleach is back with their adapting their final arc. And I'm like, I used to be into Bleach so long ago, and I used to like read the manga.
We all were.
And like I like weekly, and at a certain point I couldn't take it anymore, and I dropped it. But then like a few weeks ago, when I heard I remember the Bleach was coming back, I was like, what if I just like read Bleach again and do it all the way through and don't drop it, because like now it's all over and everything. So I'm a changed man because I guess I'm a certified Bleach expert now, because I read the manga from beginning to end in 5 days. I started on Sunday night and I got done on Thursday. And I'm like, what have I done?
I like how this is the second week in a row we're talking about anime at the start of the podcast. Does Gundam update on Saturday mornings or Sunday mornings?
Sunday mornings, yeah.
Oh, so okay, that's tomorrow.
The second episode is out there, and that's a pretty interesting. Yeah, that was pretty good too. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Like now I know like everything about Bleach, and like I'm like well equipped to like fully understand the new anime that's coming out. I'm like, I don't know if I like that. What have I done?
I mean, I remember watching Bleach like on the. It wasn't even Toonami. It was just Adult Swim midnight. We show Bleach at midnight for some reason, sort of thing. And I think I watched it up to the final, like where they decided to cancel the anime or whatever. So like I could clear the cobwebs and get caught up pretty quick. I don't stay up to date on a lot of anime, but Bleach is like one of them, because like I said, we were all. I wouldn't say all. Yeah. That's pretty absolute, but.
Bleach, it definitely captured an audience and era at some point.
Yeah, it's hard to remember. It was one of the quote big three at one point. Hard to imagine, but yeah, it was.
Yeah, so that's been pretty much my week. Aside from that, like after I got done with it, I'm like, I guess since I'm still in this weird period, I should take this time to like try to like catch up on like big manga that I've missed over the years. And like I only like reading manga that's like completely done. So I guess like I'm starting to read Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba right now, because I've been following the anime adaptations for that, and I enjoyed those. So I was like, why don't I just read it? It's done. So might as well just do it. And there I am.
When does that anime start airing? The last arc?
Well, the Bleach already started airing. Yeah, it's already like it aired first episode. I think it comes out on Mondays, but I think it's like weird because it's like on Disney Plus and or Hulu in some territories. I forgot how like the regional split for that is, but it's like the big news with it, like when it was announced, was like it's on Disney Plus, but then Hulu was like we also have it too, but I don't know if that's just for some regions and so forth. I don't really know how that's divided up.
I mean, there's a lot of confusion. Like as someone who's more of a casual anime watcher, like I'm still like confused about the Sony, Funimation, Crunchyroll, who owns what, where thing, because like Funimation still has an app, but that's going to be sunsetted at some point, and it's confusing.
It's a mess. Yeah, it's these things are rarely ever clean, especially with all the mergers and stuff, and well, like the licenses, where do they go? And it's all poorly communicated, both to the consumer and sometimes on the back end as well for the publishers and licensors. So it's just who knows.
Mm-hmm. Looking ahead at our podcast outline for this week, for kind of the second week in a row, this has been a little bit of a hodgepodge episode lineup, because we don't have like a clear single event or announcement. We kind of have news filtering in from multiple sources. We have some news that has been out in like Japanese official media for a while, that we only recently got in English or is yet to come out in English. Some things that are just like loose announcements from Twitter accounts. Like, for instance, we got some footage about, I believe, Focus on Celica from the Fire Emblem Japanese Twitter account, but not officially in a press release or an asset dump. And then in terms of games we've been playing, early October has been a little bit light. There's been a few games that have released recently that we've been interested in. Like, for instance, I've mentioned on the podcast a few times Lost Eidolons. But I saw Josh actually linked in one of our Discord channels how the developer of that game is still working on doing a lot of polish. So I'm probably holding off on that. We've got Persona 5 PC ports next week. But we're going to start out with something that's not a heavy hitter, but it is kind of the newest, most relevant thing. And that is we got our second volume for the Xenoblade 3 expansion pass. So this is the first volume of the expansion pass, if I recall correctly, was mostly just items. So this is the first one that's
and the
really
recolored
content
costumes.
Oh yeah, the extra costumes. I don't know about you, but I like.
Swap.
So here's a tease. I have been playing Cold Steel 4 this week for no good reason. So I will talk about that later. But like in that game, it has a ton of like extra hairstyles that you unlock throughout the game, and then obviously in Xenoblade 3, even with the first and second expansion pass volumes, you get a lot of cosmetics. I don't know about you, but in any game, I almost always just use the default costumes. I don't like slap on attachments in Tails games or change hair color or like I'm just not into that. I think Scarlet Nexus was the last time I really tried to do that, but even then it felt like I wasn't being true to myself.
I know this is a little off topic, but I actually don't mind like in older Tales games when like I don't like the costumes that are like part of a set, like the school set or the samurai set or the swimsuit set. But like sometimes, and especially in older games, they had like almost like a unique costume that was pretty much just like an alternate character design. Just like here's an alternate costume for the character that's just like a different take on it. It's not a part of a set, it's not part of a gimmick, it's just a different costume. And some of those I don't mind.
It's like the military costumes for Xenoblade characters. It's not really part of a like set. It was plot relevant at one point, and it did just give you the option if you want to like if you like that look, you can go back to it. Like those, I don't mind because they're like plot relevant. There is some sort of sentiment and meaning to it. For like you said, like the swimsuit and samurai sets, like that. Those I don't really care about. You're just reminding me like of like certain like DLC costume sets that are like, so wildly like out of place. Like for example, for Fuga, like those costume DLC for the Fuga children. It's just like I get it why they do it, but at the same time, it feels so wildly out of place for that sort of game. And
I need an example what an out of place Fuga child costume is.
They'd have like swimsuit DLC, like samurai DLC costumes.
I think the Fuga DLC sets are literally the three common ones: swimsuit, school, and samurai. Or warring states. Those are the three that you'll always find. But the thing is, in Fuga, like that, most of the gameplay when you're like on the tank, you don't. It's not you only see the costumes like when you're just walking around the tank, so it's like okay.
Yeah, so it just feels like weird because like that's like not really the tone of the game either. It's it's pretty grim and serious, and it's like, and people are like, yeah, I'm just walking around the tank with this swimsuit and samurai outfit. It's like cool, nice. But yeah, it's just. But I'm with you, definitely like most of the time that I usually just stick with default outfits. Xenoblade 3 is kind of like a weird anomaly where it's like where like when you switch, like I don't really bother like putting them into like their default outfits if they go to like a new like class costume. I just leave them in their whatever class they swap to. I don't go out of my way and take the extra time.
I consider that almost the default in Xenoblade 3 is
okay,
having it swap with class. So in Xenoblade 3, a couple days ago, as of the time of recording, released its Volume 2 for its expansion pass. This is mostly focused on two things. It introduces the hero Iono and their hero and ascension quests. And then it introduces the Land of Challenge and Challenge Battles, which obviously were a major component of the expansion pass content in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. So I booted the game back up, and I know when Adam was playing through Xenoblade 3, he's the one that did all of our, or I won't say all, a good chunk of all of our guides up on the site for Xenoblade 3. So Adam was very exhaustive with the game. I think your hour clock is at like 400 hours or something like that. So I didn't quite do that. So there was a few unique monsters that I didn't fight. There was a couple classes that I didn't unlock. So when I first booted up Xenoblade 3, I spent a few hours just kind of like reacclimating. Like, even though it wasn't that long ago, it's like, all right, what was I in the middle of? What did I leave undone? All right, now let's look at this expansion stuff. So I don't know. I know we're talking about this first, but I don't know how we're going to get a lot of mileage out of this, because this is basically a simple mechanic that is tied to the new hero Ino. Who Ino, unfortunately, I wanted to like her or them. They're a mechanoid female human, and it's kind of like we have Poppy at home sort of thing from Xenoblade 2, with this twist that they are very like, they have like no pawn mannerisms. She says meh, 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 and things like that, which I think is
my
neat.
gosh. That's
And the voice actress, at least in English, is kind of like, it's I don't like it, but I don't think it's because it's a bad recording job. It's just because
that's
it's like,
one thing I've heard about this. I don't know anything about like her, like what happens in that character quest. The only thing I know about Ino is people are very divisive over her English voice. That's it. I don't know anything else.
I don't like it, but I think it's almost by design, because she's kind of like shrill and high pitched. She obviously has like annoying no pawn, crappy English mannerisms. It was a breath of fresh air to get like Riku. I know like Riku's voice I don't think I know. I think I know that Riku's voice in English is very like deep and not typical of what they've been using for no pawn characters, but they kind of went different with Riku, and I think the result's actually pretty interesting and good. But Ino is kind of in terms of her voice, but I think it's kind of just because she's supposed to be a little bit like, even in the cutscenes to introduce her character, Noah is like visibly cringing at certain aspects of it, so it's kind of like by design. I will say that it feels a bit. So I'm doing this on a end game file, which is obviously how I feel that most people are going to experience this for a while, unless they're going to revisit Xenoblade 3 later, or don't get to the series until later and then buy it with the expansion pass. So in the chapter 3 area of Fornus, you accept the quest as almost like an item from the expansion pass menu. So I assume early on in the game, you can get this quest in your quest log, and it just points you to an area of the Fornus region in the desert. You go there and you find Ino basically defending a traveling no pawn caravan, who, it's not the first no pawn caravan that you've seen. That's pretty much her hero quest, is that she introduces herself to you and basically says like, oh, I'm looking for these ether cylinder, only they're not normal ether cylinder, they're HD ether cylinder pluses. They're extra special, extra fancy. And the game goes on a pretty long and almost like overwrought exposition about how she likes to drink this ether cylinder, and how that's strange and weird, but I guess it powers her up. So it introduces this Ino swap mechanic, where instead of having your normal ether channels, you have ether spheres. And this is a lot of jargon, I know. So in the Xenoblade 3 base game, there are ether channels dotted all throughout the map, and after a while they almost become like you get way more ether cylinders than you need to spend them. You use them to like revitalize like the Piranus Hulk, so you use them in a few quests, but there becomes a point where you just stop paying attention to them because you get so many. Well, instead of like recalibrating that resource, they just add another one that is very similar but different. Instead of being a green energy called like ether, it's a yellow energy called ether spheres. So instead of having your normal ether channel on a map, you have a little sphere on a map, and it's guarded by enemies. It's kind of like a drop zone, like a supply drop. So you see this on your map, you kill like 2 to 4 enemies around it, then you can access the ether sphere. You fill out a different gauge, so it's a different resource than the normal ether cylinders, and then you use these basically just in a menu to power up Ino's skills and abilities. It really isn't more than that. It's just obtain resource from locations on map, dump into a menu within Ino's character screen. Very kind of similar to the interlink mechanic on the Ouroboros forums, where as soon as you get enough points, or in this case ether cylinders, you dump it and you get just passive boost to your abilities. So it's not as interesting as I think it could have been. It didn't take that long to just top it out. I just kind of randomly went from location to location throughout the map to do it. On a gameplay perspective, I'm not a Xenoblade expert. I haven't done like super theory crafting. What is optimal build? Is this going to be something that ends up being, meta in the end game or whatever? But she is a defender class, which I think is smart, because I think they had the smallest number of options in the base game. Kind of a very damage dealing, evasive defender class. So kind of similar to Ashira, only with bonuses for like, if she gets KO'd, some of her abilities get stronger if she gets revived. So it's almost supposed to be like she's a glass cannon defender, so which is kind of interesting. You get it unlocked with Noah as the inheritor of it, and basically, as soon as I unlocked the class, I immediately dumped no pawn coins into Noah's class to get it to rank 10 to unlock the Ascension quest. And then the Ascension quest is a little bit more interesting. But it's no pawn focused, so it's kind of has high amount of levity, kind of irreverent. There's no like, this is a very silly side story, which Xenoblade gets to several times. So it's not like incongruent in that sense, but it's not something that is like meaningful or ends up being like paying dividends and like, oh, this explains this one aspect of the story that was left surface level, or wow, I finally got insight into this mysterious thing. It kind of feels like a very whimsical little story. So it does.
Yeah, I heard
which I kind of enjoy.
I heard the spirit of it is more like akin to like a Xenoblade 2, like what were they called? Like those character quests. I forgot exactly what they were called, but
Blade quests.
Yeah, the Blade quest. They're more in the spirit of that.
Yeah, it actually kind of is, and they actually use terms like "I am a blade and you are my driver," and Noah's like a driver. That's what it's at.
Oh.
So it does play.
Okay.
It does pay a little bit of kind of nostalgic homage to Xenoblade 2 players, even though beyond a surface level, it doesn't like function any differently than a normal hero. It's not like it's tied to Noah or whoever. Like it doesn't actually have a new driver blade mechanic. It's just kind of for the flavor of it. And that's pretty much all there is to say on the Iono stuff itself. You can get it done in like an hour if you use the no pawn coins to boost your level. There is a little bit of a section where you get like a side quest where you have to dump resources to a character to power up the ether cylinders. But since I was at end game, I already had all the items I needed, so I just pressed A on my menu a few times, and it's like, oh, now you've got Ether Cylinder Volume 5, and it'll collect the most amount of energy from the energy sources. So it ended up being kind of like very, very quick and very easy. Maybe it'll feel a little bit more meaningful if you're progressing throughout the game and you're upgrading your cylinders as you go through, as you are able to gather the resources. But if you're playing on like an end game or near end game file, it ends up just being kind of almost like a tax that you pay, like, oh, give us enough of these consumable items that you have plenty of probably, and there you completed the side quest. As for the Land of Challenge, if you played it in Xenoblade 2, it's very, very similar to how it is there. You got a list of like a dozen or so different challenges, and some of them start out like very basic. Some of them are like, oh, here you get to fight Silvercoat Ethel and Kamaravi at the same time. Here you get to fight like the level 100 monsters all in a boss rush sort of thing. Here's a few other different like things where you're not allowed to interlink in this one, or in this one your crafts, your arts recharge twice as fast, or things like that. On a gameplay mechanic, there are a few things that the Land of Challenge kind of offers that is kind of useful, it's kind of quality of life, though I hesitate to say that because it's behind paid DLC. You, just like in Xenoblade 2, as you complete these challenges, the main currency is Nopon Stone. You can exchange this. One of the things you can exchange it for is class unlock. So instead of having to, like, remember if you go to the class screen and if you haven't unlocked a class, it'll show like a silhouette that fills up bottom to top.
You gotta like build up
and you gotta
to unlock it.
Yeah, and you kind of have to, and it's tied to your CP gain, and you kind of have to have multiple characters playing a new class and gain CP to have other characters unlock that class. Well, now if you wanted to, you don't have to do that at all. You can just dump Nopon stones into it. So you can just do some challenge battles, do them on auto battle or whatever, just build up this resource and then just unlock them all at once. So it's kind of nice that they give you another option there, though it doesn't feel like rewarding. You can dump Nopon stones into getting gold and silver Nopon coins. So I think that's the first time there's a truly like reliable replenishable source of those. If you want to use gold coins to like unlock the gem crafting bit, instead of having to grind items, you can do that. Even though it seems like it's pretty damn expensive, you'll be doing a lot of challenge battles to do it that way. But hey, it's an option. When you do the challenge battles, there's easy, medium, hard, but you can unlock everything on easy if you wanted to. You'll just gather resources a bit slower. However, back to the initial discussion of this podcast, there's like 15 or so challenge battles, and like the first 6 unlock swimsuit, and then the second 6 unlock different swimsuits, and I'm just like, I don't have any. So swimsuits, I'm like, all right, I get it. That's very, very common. I wasn't surprised. Obviously, they marketed it that it would have swimsuits, so this wasn't a surprise at all. Like, all right, I'll unlock these swimsuits, but it also just kind of feels like an opportunity cost. Like, okay, you give me like 15 challenge battles, and 80% of them give you swimsuits. It just feels like it's not quite 80%. I don't remember the exact numbers, but there's like 12 different swimsuits because it's a 6 main cast times 2 variants each. And I'm just like, it just feels kind of like, couldn't you do swimsuits and then another type of costume? Like, I know Adam said he doesn't like themed costumes, but at least not just another set of swimsuits or another color.
For the second set, are they just like recolors of the same design, or are they actually like different designs altogether of the swimsuits?
I'll be honest, I haven't checked just because I honestly like don't care.
Yeah,
I just unlocked them just to unlock them, and then I didn't even go into the menu to like check them out. Maybe that's bad of me to report on it, but I guess I looked at the reporting with swimsuits and I was like, you do on some of the harder challenges get some really good accessories, like one of which is like they're basically higher tiers of accessories that already exist in the game. Like one of them is deals 80% more damage to monsters higher level than you, things like that. I think there was already a 50 or 60% in the game. So obviously for all like the end game bosses that are like level 110, 120, if you want to like do those on challenge mode on hard, having your people kitted out with abilities like that would be good. Then you can also exchange the Nopon stones for another set of accessories that are again like a tier up from everything in the game. I don't remember the exact percentages. For those that really get into like the theory crafting, like one of the accessories that you can exchange Nopon stones for is increases attack by 40%, I believe, and I believe the previous highest was 32%. I think there's one that says like increases attack by 40% when attacking from the front, rear, or behind. So for those that really like to min-max and have as easy of a time as possible, there's a lot of just basically it's almost like a tier up on all the accessories. There's newer, better versions of all of those. I think there were some that had a few like interesting actual mechanics that weren't just passive numbers, but honestly, most of them are just here's the same accessory, only the percentage is higher now, which I think is a little bit of a missed opportunity there.
They also added highly requested features that are not like behind paid DLC with the like because the game got patched as well with the new update. And like one of the like weirdly enough, one of the new features in this patch was people now have like a death cry when they fall from too far. So like when they fall off a cliff, they'll actually like yell or say something as they're like falling to their death because that wasn't there before. So that's I don't know a weird thing to add, I guess now.
I don't know if this is in paid DLC. I don't think it is, but now you can save class art skill loadouts.
That's good. Yeah, that's actually a great quality of life.
Yeah, which is very good. It ties well to the challenge DLC because if you want to have a specific loadout for instance, that accessory I talked about, if you're fighting something that's higher level than you, you're probably going to want those accessories. But if not, you won't. So you can get those into 2 different loadouts rather than having to, micromanage those. I will say that as another like aside, for as I was going through this challenge stuff, I've beaten like most of them on easy, like 60% of them on normal, and some of the easiest ones I've beaten on hard. But there's some where it's like for this challenge, everyone in your party must be soul hackers, which is kind of like the blue mage class that I kind of ignored from the base game. So I didn't like have any soul hacker stuff unlocked or anything like that. And I'm like, oh God, why? So I've been spending a couple hours literally just consulting Adam's RPGsite.net unique monster guide to just find where all the unique monsters are and see if I could power up my soul hackers, because I tried even doing that challenge on easiest, but my soul hackers, everyone was like level 1. I didn't have like any of the abilities or skills. I'm like, all right, I guess if I want to do this and get this accessory that you get for beating that challenge, I'm going to have to like put some time into this, which is kind of fun. It's good to have an excuse to mess with a part of the game that I just ignored before with the whole soul hacker class. So I kind of whine about it, half-heartedly there about why would they make you do this, but I actually do kind of appreciate that they have something built into the challenge mode that incentivizes you to use the soul hacker class and figure out how it works. And maybe I'll put a soul hackers only loadout into my new loadout capability menu there. But other than that, that's really all that kind of came out of the second DLC. Unless you spend time powering up your soul hackers or things like that to actually go through all the stuff, probably just takes a couple of hours. If you want to like get S ranks on all the challenges, that'll take you a little bit longer. There was a tease and then I think a leak of what the volume 3 hero is going to be. I think it's just the artwork, so I don't know how much you can glean from that, but that's out there if you're interested in that. I don't know if we have a date on that.
I'm not too
Let me check
sure
real
either.
quick.
I might, yeah, but I don't know. I mean, these sorts of like incremental updates, like I mentioned before. It's just none of them are the substantial enough to really interest me. Like I said, like I probably won't touch this game again until like the story expansion, because those are the things that interest me. Like it's just I never was big into the challenge missions or the even the extra content that Xenoblade 2 added over time. Like I didn't touch that game again until like Torna came out, and like I had a blast with
I
that.
think I remember on the podcast I said the same thing, and then it turns out I didn't. All right, so I booted up the game, and I'm looking at the swimwear. It is just 2 different recolors. So basically,
You
you
go.
get one set of swimwear for every character, and then a recolor. And that's
Something for the fan
most of the
artists.
challenge rewards. Yeah, I mean it's fine. It's just that I always just keep them in their default outfits. And I'd look at all these other outfits that I got, like, oh, like I didn't remember that I got this. Like Tyon Color 2. I guess I got that for pre-ordering the game or something. I don't remember. I guess I'll just keep reporting on Xenoblade when the next when Volume 3 comes out, even though I don't anticipate that it'll be any more substantial than this one, but maybe.
Yeah, that one might be interesting because like one of the teaser images for that next one that they showed off was like there was like at least 2 heroes out on the battlefield at once fighting together.
Oh right, I remember that. Yeah.
Like that might be interesting if it's like not just if it's actually like kind of flips the battle system on its head in some sort of meaningful way.
So we're going to go on to another game that James has been playing that he was really eager to talk about. And this is a game that's been on our radar, especially Adams, because it is slated for an English release next year. And that is Nayuta no Kiseki. So if you've listened to this podcast a few times, you're probably kind of aware of what this is. And you might say, oh, that's a familiar title. When does that fit into the series? Well, I'll hand it over to James to talk about here because it released on Steam about a year ago, but only with Japanese support officially. I hope I'm getting the details right. But so without further ado, I'll just hand it off to James, who I don't know if you tackled this in the last week for a particular reason, or if you just found that you had bandwidth and decided to do it. But what has your experience been with Nayuta no Kiseki?
Okay, so I was intending to play Kuro 2 first, but I was on a road trip with my family last week, like 6-hour drive each way with not much cell reception. So I was like, well, I'm not the one driving. I need something to do. And so I was like, well, let's see how Nayuta runs on Steam Deck, because I bought it when it came out on launch on Steam in Japanese. I think it had a launch discount. I'm not sure. And it worked perfectly. So I was like, well, I don't know when I'll have a better chance to play this, and I could wait for the English release, but I was kind of in the mood for something that was, for lack of a better word, it was like a more pick up and play game, because I've been playing a ton of super long JRPGs recently, and I wanted something that was more like bite sized, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
So yeah, I played through the entire base game. I started up on the after story. I'm going to try and see if I can convince Alex if I can write something about this, because honestly, I feel like people are completely sleeping on this game.
It's a
Like,
rad game. I played this like on the PSP years ago, and I honestly really enjoyed my time with it and like the original release of that.
I would say it's probably in my top 5 Falcom games. It's
I can see
really
that.
good.
Yeah.
It's really good. I know a lot of people said, oh, it's basically Y3. I wouldn't disagree with that assessment, because it's definitely got a lot of Zwei DNA in it. Certainly more Zwei DNA than Trails DNA, but that's besides the point. Because you do have the whole, oh, you can craft food and then it can heal you and also gives you XP. You've got a companion that fights alongside you that can deal magic while you have like melee attacks and whatnot. So it's like very obviously heavily Zwei inspired, to the point where I can understand why people say, oh, this is Y3. Overall, though, I'd say it's more like a mix between like Zwei, Gurman of all things, and the combat system of the Napishtim Engine East games. Because Nayuta's melee moveset, especially the further along you get into the game, has a lot to it, and it's kind of surprising. So one other thing that I didn't really know about the game heading in is that so it's stage based, which is fine, but the way stages work is that you can get up to 3 stars for them. Get 1 star for just finishing a stage, 2 stars for finding every crystal and the treasure chests in the stage, and then there's also a challenge that each stage has. So it could be take less than 10 hits of damage, or fall less than 3 times, or don't run out of your gear craft gauge, stuff like that. And you have these little like stamp cards where for every star you get, you eventually like every 6 stars, you can go to Nayuta's like teacher, his like sword teacher, and he'll either give you like a new skill to learn or a piece of equipment or buff one of your abilities in some way. And there's a really nice like gameplay loop to it, like how you're going into each stage and you're like doing these challenges, getting these stars, getting new abilities, and all the while, like while in each stage, enemies will drop ingredients you can use to make food. Sometimes they'll drop stuff that you can donate to a museum, which funnily enough, this game has a an Animal Crossing style museum.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's like in stages, like you'll find these breakable pieces of the environment that can just drop things like insects, like maybe in a water area, there's coral you can break that'll drop like fish, or you'll find like some fossils, and if you break them up, or amber, you break them up, you'll get like fossils, and then so on and so forth. And you can donate these to the museum to get Mira, which is obviously the currency, to buy either new equipment, ingredients to cook, so on and so forth. And everything you donate is actually showcased, and you can like even read a little bit about the animal or the fossil or like artifact or whatever you've donated. Like it's just straight up an Animal Crossing museum.
And to be clear to people like don't know much about Nayuta and Kiseki, this is like you do not need to play any of the Trails games to understand this. It's completely standalone, separate from
Oh
the
yeah,
Trails
oh yeah.
series.
I would go as far as to say is even if you're not a fan of Trails, I would still recommend trying Nayuta because it is like
It's
a
very
completely
different.
different. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
completely different beast. Like you can tell that the only reason that they have Trails in the title is because of marketing purposes. Because like
Yeah, I was
know
gonna ask, like, obviously it has the same naming scheme. Does it borrow like any lore or mythos from the Trail series at all, or like literally nothing?
nothing. You don't even have any of the
Huh.
classic like Trails enemies or anything in there. It's very much a like I said, the closest comparison is Zwei meets Grimmin, because these stages have like platforming to them. As you're going through the game, you unlock these abilities called gear crafts. One of them lets you uh, send out a strong attack that will break breakable walls or pillars. So kind of like that ability in East 9 that you eventually get. Uh, you get the ability to make a barrier that lets you walk on top of water or lava. You get the ability to, and this is really fun, which basically turns Noi, your fairy companion, into like 2 giant gears, and you just roll around that way through a stage, and it's a lot of fun. And if there's walls that have grooves on them, you can just ride up the walls that way. Or if there's tracks that are like a yellowish orange glow, you can't walk on them, but if you use your gear craft to like ride over them with the wheel, you can just ride across them and get across gaps that way. And there's a lot of like interesting ways that the game uses these abilities in puzzle solving. And it's like I was really pleasantly surprised at how good the level design was and how well paced everything is.
Mhm.
Like the boss fights are fantastic. Like I was talking with a buddy of mine, and he said that he hadn't finished all of Nayuta. He played like halfway through on the fan translation before realizing that was a mistake. Um, I'd say this probably has better boss fights than most party style East games. Like maybe even all of them, because they all
Yeah,
are
I
pretty.
mean, I could see that. I'd have to like replay it again, but I'd probably agree if on a replay.
Yeah, it's like just I don't really have anything bad to say. Even the story, which isn't really the main focus, has its moments, and there's some interesting like little things that happen near the end. And it's like
It's simple
it's
but effective. It doesn't like really. You don't have to like try to connect all the lore bits from like a baggage from that the Trail series has. It's like it's a nice, simple, effective story, and I appreciate that.
Yeah,
It's very
and
focused.
self-contained, thank God.
Yeah,
But
it's neat. It's neat. I think the only thread it has with the like Trails is like there has the Mishi, the mascot, in it. I
yeah,
think.
that's it.
Yeah.
But even
The
Mishi
Mishi
is in,
shows up in Ys
isn't-
games, yeah.
Yeah, so it's
At least
Yeah,
the recent
it's
ones.
just a Falcom thing.
Yeah. But yeah, I definitely would recommend this, and especially for folks like looking forward to this, or maybe that had heard about it but weren't looking forward to it. I would say that this definitely has a solid chance of definitely, I'd say, like being in the top 10 the year it comes out. But it's like, for me, it's like I wouldn't give it a 10, but I definitely give it a 9. And it's like, it's just I was surprised. It's really, really
I'm happy
good.
this will be like widely available next year to me on PlayStation, Switch, and PC next year for English
Yeah.
worldwide fans.
yeah,
So
and-
and it's like not technically demanding. So I imagine there'll be like no like weird. I imagine no weird things happening in behind the scenes from when it in its distribution.
Yeah, I will say that I did play it on Steam Deck. I think I briefly said as much when I first started talking about it. But yeah, I played the entire thing on Steam Deck. Got really good battery life too, like 5.5 to 6 hours, and like no frame drops. With there's not really much to change. It's just there's like an HD texture pack you can install, which doesn't really impact performance much on Steam Deck. And then there's
It's just this standard firmware that the Steam Deck has. Nothing you don't have to like,
worked
get a
out of the
different.
box. Even
Okay.
the videos worked without any issues whatsoever.
Cool.
So I'd
Nice.
say, so yeah, like I mean, I'm not shocked because it's a Durante port, and Durante is very much a big fan of the Steam Deck. So especially going forward, he's gonna make sure at least his ports work on it. But yeah, but then again, with how like demanding the Yuta is, I wouldn't be shocked if it's like just as good on Switch. So it's like it, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. But I'm sure they're gonna do their best to make sure that like this gets like an outstanding out of the box experience next year.
Yeah.
So I was trying to follow up with Adam because he is a computer brain when it comes to this stuff. Because Nayuta no Kiseki was kind of almost a footnote with that big combo announcement of when we learned that we were getting Zero and Azure, which leaked beforehand. Remember was it on the Epic Store? How did that leak again? I don't remember. That we learned that we were going to get Zero. I know it all leaked like a day before the official announcement or so, but we learned we were going to get official announcements of Zero and Azure, and we got the official name.
It leaked on the
English
Epic
name.
Game Store. Just the store pages went up for all of them.
Yeah, we learned that Hajimari no Kiseki in English was when we called Trails into Reverie. Into Reverie? I don't remember what the middle word is. But then also Nayuta no Kiseki ended up becoming Boundless Trails in English. And it was kind of a footnote there, and I was trying to remind myself, when's this coming out? It's currently just slated for worldwide 2023, so we don't have anything more detailed than that. But yeah, it'll be officially in English.
It is actually the sleeper like hit like next year because people are going to be focused on Azure and Reverie for good reason. Obviously, like those are excellent games too. But I think people should also be really looking at Nayuta as well, and I'm glad that James went back and replayed it because it is a legitimately like fantastic game. Like, and I hope more people get to play it and try it, and like they don't skip over it. Like, people really have to like communicate and like say it again and again. This is not like related at all to the current Trails series. You don't need to go play the other ones to like understand it or anything. It's completely standalone and separate. Like, I think that's one of those like points that they have to reiterate again and again and again to people because it's definitely far away from that.
So keeping on the pretty much on the same tact, I basically in the last week got my Steam Deck first. I think I got it 2 weeks ago, but I first now turned it on and got it all set up. I downloaded some custom like Proton. I don't know if firmware is the right name because I heard that was useful. I messed with some settings, and then I was trying to decide what do I play first on this. Kind of just looking at what was in my Steam library that I hadn't played yet, something that I've been mentioning that I've wanted to get to for a while. I decided that the first game I was going to play on my Steam Deck was Trails Cold Steel 4. So obviously a game that we have talked about in a bunch of different kind of interesting contexts on this podcast, but one game that, well, as we go into next year, and I want to make sure that I'm quote unquote caught up for Trails into Reverie, something that I've been basically putting on the back burner for a while and wanted to finally get to. So I'm about like 16 hours into it. I think I just got into Act 2, or I'm right at the end of Act 1. First of all, my Steam Deck experience has been really good. I have been just using it mostly out of the box without any issues. The only thing that I have is that sometimes when I close the game, it freezes. Never on startup. The videos play, the game plays fine. Just on closing, it seems to have a hitching problem, which doesn't really matter because I was closing the game anyways. It's been really handy just to be able to go from my PC, go to Steam Cloud, and go onto the Steam Deck and play it in bed or on the couch.
Future.
Yeah, I mean, it's now that we're living in a world where Switch has been around for 5 years, it doesn't seem like that novel anymore. But it is just neat that these games that I purchased a long time ago on Steam, I can just have that option now. As a footnote, I did recently just get my official Steam Deck dock, but I'm having a few issues getting with that to output correctly. But once I look forward into that, or look into troubleshooting that, being able to play on my PC in my office upstairs, and then take it into bed, and then if I have someone over and I want to make sure that I'm not hiding in my office, I can take it to the TV downstairs and play it there. I don't know. It's like living in the future.
Yeah, you have a system going on. You're already like just imagining it. You're like, once this is all set up, this is my system. This is how life will work from here on out.
I know it sounds a bit silly, but I bought the Steam Link that got discontinued several years ago at this point, but it never quite worked well. And the Steam Link app on my phone never quite worked well, which is surprising. And this is going to sound like default stuff, but like I have good internet, don't have any issues anywhere else with the Steam Link. As good of work as Valve does with Proton and Steam, SteamOS and things like that, the remote play has never been, for whatever reason, whether it's my configuration or the games I'm trying with it, the remote play has never really worked very well. So to be able to have it installed on my Steam Deck and my PC and play it either place and then dock it into my TV I'm looking forward to having that all worked out. As for the game itself, I'm far enough that I feel like I have plenty to say, but I'm not far enough that I want to like pass judgment or have a final opinion. First of all, back when Cold Steel 3 came out in English, I remember that being the point where it was heavily suggested amongst the fan base that for those that had started with the Cold Steel games and Cold Steel 3, that really is where it becomes difficult to parse exactly what's happening if you don't have background knowledge of what happened in the Crossbell games or the Trails trilogy, the Trails in the Sky trilogy. But I pushed through Cold Steel 3 anyways, and I managed. And then when the Geofront translations came out, I played Zero and Azure that way. Going into Cold Steel 4, at that point, unless you are just you're okay with just reading plot synopsises or character bios on wikis and things like that. Like Cold Steel 4 starts out with tons of references and characters and locations from from the Crossbell games, but also from earlier than that. So at that point, that's where it like becomes basically the opposite of Nayuta no Kiseki. It seems like that's where everything is starting to converge, which makes sense because it's the end of that major arc. At least by design. I don't know exactly how Hajimari ties into that, so we'll learn that as I go. Hopefully I'm not saying anything that those that do know what is going on is kind of sitting there like, oh, wait till you get to Hajimari and you learn that this happens or this happens. Obviously Hajimari features both Lloyd and Reen as playable protagonists, so I'm sure it does have a lot of that crossover as well. I remember when James was first covering Cold Steel 4, he said that, and correct me if I'm misinterpreting what you said back then, but you really enjoyed the first act where the focus is on basically New Class 7, that main cast of characters trying to like rebound from the climactic events of the third game, which ends on a major cliffhanger. And I think I agree in retrospect, mainly because, and I know he's very popular, but I just don't care for Reen at all. I don't hate him, but I just think he is very bland, and his personality type just doesn't suit me for like what I'm looking for in a protagonist. So the fact that I'm trying to be careful. I'm going to try to speak in very general terms. Obviously we'll timestamp this as Cold Steel 4. I'm not going to talk about specific story events, but obviously I'll have to talk about like the premise of the game being the fourth in a series. If you haven't played 1 through 3, I will talk about those in very high level. But Reen is off screen. for the first 15 hours of this game or so, due to what happens at the end of Cold Steel 3. It's mostly you start with Juna, Kurt, and Altina, and the first part of Act 1 is catching up with Ash and the role that he played at the end of Cold Steel 3. And then after that, you catch up with Muse and the role that she played at the end of Cold Steel 3. So a lot of the starting of Cold Steel 4 is just kind of getting your bearings back, has this kind of excuse to like re-catch up with not only the primary characters, but the other schoolmates of New Class 7, which unfortunately it's been long enough where I'm like, oh yeah, I vaguely remember this guy with creepy eyes that likes to eat strange food, Frankie or whatever. And this character was I remember that in English, he has an Irish accent and likes trains, I believe, Pablo. So like these characters that I don't really have like a high like rapport with, but the game is like slowly one by one reintroducing me to those characters. So on a functional level, that worked pretty well. On a gameplay front, it's kind of if you've played any of the other games, it doesn't do a whole lot that's new. I think it has some different ways that the Master Quartz works, especially with the sub quartz and things like that. I do like that it introduces you a lot to old Class 7 pretty early on, but as you go out into your excursions, you can only pick from a selected limited number of them, which I think works pretty well, rather than just saying, here's a cast of 15 characters, pick your favorite 4. It says, here's a cast of 8, pick your favorite 4. You can pick one of the old Class 7 or things like that. I will say, though, that the story in the first part of Cold Steel 4 is quite meandering. The main backdrop is that it's the onset of war between Erebonia and Calvard, and there's like basically a draft that's been executed in Erebonia, that people are basically being enlisted into the military and being sent off to war. And there's a few touches where it kind of comes into play as a backdrop, but it's considering the events of the end of Cold Steel 3, I don't really feel like a sense of urgency at the start. It feels very like, oh wow, everyone that we know, other than the people that that were on the ship at the end, like it doesn't seem like there's a lot of gravity to it. It seems very kind of chipper and cheery. Go on.
One thing I will give to Cold Steel 4 is that when I did go through my review, I talked with basically everyone every time something happened, like NPCs and whatnot. In the main story, they don't do much about it, but one thing I will give Cold Steel 4 credit for is that if you're talking with the NPCs as events go on, you can actually see each NPC is going through their own little mini arc about how their family and themselves are reacting to the draft stuff. So,
okay.
So I'll give the game credit for that. Like if you're talking with the NPCs, you can actually feel a lot more of that gravity.
Okay. And yeah, I'm not I have like a middle ground. Like I'm not ignoring everyone, but I am not like, I remember even when the original PSP games came out over here, people talked about how, wow, after every single story beat, everyone has something new to say. That's why there's so much dialogue. Remember those old images about the script that Xseed had to translate for 2nd and 3rd specifically, because the dialogue is so frequently updated in these games. So yeah, I have seen that in small bits, but I haven't been exhaustive about it. So maybe as I go into Act 2, I'll put a higher focus on that. I guess my main feeling right now as I progress into Act 2 is that despite not feeling the story of Cold Steel 4, and unfortunately my expectations are a little bit kind of slanted based on everything I've read about the game, both in the context of the site here as well as elsewhere, but it does feel like comfort food, like just the way that the game is structured, the combat flow, the way that the stories, the exposition takes place. Like I'm enjoying that. And I haven't had that since I played through the 2 Crossbell games, which I guess was only a year ago. So in that sense, I am enjoying myself. It just doesn't set itself apart so far for being like the final part of this arc. But again, I'm early in the game. I haven't really been reintroduced to Terene yet, which I don't know if I'm looking forward to that.
Hey,
but you
have many hours left, Brian. I salute you.
Well, yeah, I looked at how long to beat, and they're like an average playthrough, 68 hours or whatever. And like I know if you're being completionist, that doubles. So I'm like, all right, yeah, I'm not even there yet, but
yeah, I'm interested to hear more about like your playthrough and like seeing it unfolded like in front of you. You know, like seeing is believing. You know, I'm not gonna not here to put words into your mouth or anything, but it's always interesting to see how people interpret the events that happen in Cold Steel 4 as it's like unfolding and seeing about like, you know, where the story goes.
I will say that even in Act 1, this is something that I've complained about so a few times, and I don't want to harp on it, but it's always at the front of my mind when I'm playing these games, is that especially in the Cold Steel series, it seems like the Falcom writers have a particular manner of how they address how to resolve a climactic situation, where they love to go to the well of having an off-screen character come in to save the day, which is not inherently bad, but I just feel like it is unusually frequent in these games, so that when it happens, it doesn't land as well as it could. So early on in Act 1, you find a group of the minor antagonists in the series, the Jaegers, the group that Fee used to be with, and you fight them, and it's kind of like an even match. They don't completely overpower you, but you're not going to beat them. And then you get saved by it's Sarah, Elliot, and one of the other characters. They come in and say like, "Oh, we're going to help you guys. We'll bail you guys out." And then later in the act, you fight with Cedric and their cohorts, and the same sort of thing happens where it's like, oh, here's more people coming to save the day because that you weren't quite going to succeed on your own. And then they kind of undermine that because that's a part of the game where Muse is basically showing her true role in the story and the sorts of things that she's planned for, which I'll just keep it at that for now. And I feel like that situation could have been resolved with that alone. But on top of having Muse have the contingency planned out for, they also have the not so fast moment where your allies come in to save the day, where they didn't really need to. So in that second instance, I felt like they were closer to doing something a little bit more novel and different with resolving the conflict, but didn't quite land it. So like I'm going to just keep an eye on that going forward because I guess I'm obsessive about that.
Someone should replay through the series and do like a not so fast count.
I think there's an Excel sheet somewhere that tracks that.
If I remember right, it's Cold Steel 2 is the worst part of it. I remember at one point in Cold Steel, I believe it's 2, where you're in the Nord Highlands, and it's just a random group of Jaegers on horseback or something, and you're not beating them, and then here's Gaius, he comes to save the day, and this is before Gaius gets his like more fancier titles later, but it's just like, oh, thank goodness Gaius was here, because we needed that one like person to come on. Then it makes sense because you were in his homeland, so I'm not trying to poo-poo on it so much. It's because it's not inherently bad, it's just that it happens often enough that it's no longer like, oh, thank God, I thought I was in trouble. You always kind of know that someone's going to bail you out.
At some point, you're making like a drinking game out of it, right? Like, you take a shot if this happens, you know?
Well, you're kind of like, when it comes to the point where it's like, oh, I'm fighting Jaegers, I wonder who's going to help me. Oh, look, it's Sarah. I suppose that makes sense. You know, things like that. When it becomes predictable like that, that's, I guess, my main issue. It's not bad. It just ends up being predictable. But I will, to its credit, when they did it slightly differently with Muse and in the middle part of Act 1, it was different enough from like, oh, they did, this is something that it wasn't quite as predictable. So very good, give them credit where it's due. But yeah, I will play through that. It'll be probably my primary game this week, and I'll be playing it off and on Steam Deck, which has been working pretty well. But basically, I didn't want to wait till we had a date for Reverie and then be like, all right, we got a date for Reverie. Now I've got the homework of doing Cold Steel 4. So like, just trying to, have a gap here, play
be a
through
good student.
Yeah, basically. And I am still enjoying the game. It's comfort food. I think I just need a new, the grass is greener. So I don't know if Hajimari will be that, but get through Cold Steel, put a pin in it, call it done, and then get to, hopefully greener pastures when we see Kuro in half a decade. But yep, that's where I'm at on that. And we'll keep you guys apprised if, I guess, to see what my honest feedback is as I get into the later parts of the game.
I'm looking to hearing more from you, whether it's on this podcast or privately.
Or otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
I think that mostly covers us for games we've been playing, except for one minor thing here. And that is that we talked about features that have been put up on the site for different preview and demo opportunities that we've had in kind of the late summer, early fall. And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've talked about this in this context. One game that we've been frequently discussing on this podcast, because it's had a lot of different marketing info come out pretty rapidly, is Wild Hearts. This is the Monster Hunter type game from EA and Koei Tecmo. And I do know that we talked about this several times, but I don't know specifically that we were able to talk about the fact that James was able to go hands-on with this game. Do I have this correct?
Yeah, no, I think the embargo lifted. It was either Sunday or Monday. No, it was Monday. It was
Gotcha.
Monday. So yeah.
So like
yeah.
a couple days after we recorded last week. So I will hand it back off to James. We've talked about Wild Hearts and what we saw in the reveal trailer and then in the gameplay trailer where they showed the King Boar Tusk or whatever his name was. But now we have a hands-on impressions that we're able to dive into here. And then not only hands-on impressions we'll talk about on the podcast, but James was able to also write up his thoughts for his impressions up on the site, where he's titled his op-ed, Wild Hearts feels primed to offer Monster Hunter its first real competition. So James, I'll just give you the floor to kind of speak to your experience going hands-on with Wild Hearts.
First off, I do think that was a good title for the preview article, but definitely some people are like, well, God Eater and Tokenen exist. And it's like, yes, they existed, but they didn't compete.
Yeah.
I think people don't get what I'm trying to say there. But
and obviously the context of the article is inherently more interesting and meaningful than the title.
Yeah. But yeah, so EA reached out to us a few weeks, I think, before they officially announced the Wild Hearts, basically saying that they were going to be announcing something like this and that they would be interested in having us play a preview build of the game. So yeah, we had the chance to download a preview build on PC, and we played through the first couple of hours of the game pretty much. Got to hunt 3 kimono. I forget the name of the first one, but I know that the latter 2 are Sap Scourge and King Tusk or something like that. So this is very much in the same vein as like Monster Hunter or Tokiden, because obviously this development team at Koei Tecmo this isn't their first rodeo. They've done like the Tokiden series. They worked on Tokiden 1, Kiwami, and Tokiden 2, which honestly, Tokiden 2 is kind of a sleeper hit. Not enough people gave it a shot. Yeah. This is in collaboration with EA. It's a lot more open. It's a next-gen exclusive, even though it's still like segmented in zones like Monster Hunter World. It's like each of them is fairly big. Like the one zone I managed to hunt in, which apparently there's like at least 4 zones, and like each of them is representing a different season. This one was representing like spring, pretty large, pretty wide open. One of the interesting things that Wild Hearts does that's different from Monster Hunter is that you have the karakuri system, or like the machinery crafting and stuff like that. And the way it works is that you use these threads, and you can either like build things just in the environment, like in the middle of a hunt. Like you can maybe make a spring, so if you walk into it, it'll automatically dash you forward like further than a regular dodge can, or you can craft blocks which you can climb on top of and jump off of to do aerial attacks. Or there's like for the King Tusk, you learn the ability to make a barricade if you stack like 6 blocks, like two columns of 3 right next to each other in short succession. It'll morph into a barricade, and if you do that while it's charging at you, it'll basically get flinged backwards, and you'll have a chance to really go ham on it. And supposedly there's a lot of like, for some monsters, there's specific moments where if you use a specific karakuri, you can kind of counter them and get a chance for an opening. So it's very much a situation where it's kind of like Monster Hunter meets Fortnite of all things, which sounds weird. I know it sounds weird, but it works in premise. And even outside of fights, you get the ability to make like watchtowers. There's these things called dragon karakuri, which are like more permanent establishments that you can place in the world. And like you can make a watchtower, which like makes it so that you can kind of track where kimonos are. You can make these kind of zip lines where you can shoot them in almost any direction in the field, and then you can have a quick like shortcut from one area to the next. You can make camps at springs whenever you find one, which allows for fast travel as well as resting and whatnot. And a number of other things. Like the weapons themselves are pretty interesting. You do have like the standard, you have a long sword and a great sword.
I was going to ask about those. Like, do you? We were talking about this. Sorry to interrupt you, but I just kind of want to make sure that we were talking about when we showed the gameplay trailer last week, how it looked. We couldn't quite glean exactly how the weapon types were implemented. Are they like completely separate ways that you upgrade or progress through them, like in Monster Hunter, or is there a way where you can?
It's like Monster Hunter.
Shoot? Oh, okay. I guess that makes that answer pretty straightforward then.
Yeah. So I didn't have too much of a chance to play with all the weapon types. I did play with longsword and greatsword. I think they have specifically different names in Wild Hearts, but they're longsword and greatsword, so people know what I
Okay,
mean.
yeah, because like it's one of those things that like with the footage that they showed off, like they showed like them turning into like different weapons like in the middle of the fight, and I wasn't sure like if that was like just like one-off skills that they were using and so forth. So maybe that's the case. Then
One ability that I think there's like stances for the bow or something. I didn't
okay,
try the bow, but apparently there's a lot of like intricacies to it. With the longsword, instead of having like the Monster Hunter Spirit Slash combo, because you build up a bar in this one too, so it's kind of similar to Monster Hunter in that regard. But once you do, you can start using it as kind of like a thorned, like segmented whip.
okay, yeah, then that's it then for sure.
Yeah,
Interesting. So
yeah. So
they can like transform to like different things once you like fill up like a prerequisite like bar or something.
that's not every weapon. Like the great sword has a bar, but it's like just a way of showcasing like a charge.
Hmm.
So and it plays more like the hammer charge in Monster Hunter versus like the
Okay.
great sword charge.
Huh.
And there's like 3 levels to it: a regular like charge slash, like strong slash, a mid level one, and then a max level charge, which has like a kind of like AOE like kind of blitz the ground type of effect and whatnot. But
So they are
yeah,
taking they are taking their own spin on the formula like in interesting ways. It's not just like copy and paste and that's done. It's like it really feels like they're putting like a lot of like really creative, interesting ideas into the formula to make it feel distinct and different and fresh.
yeah, even the monsters themselves are interesting. Like you look at them and you might think, "Oh, well that's just like a boar," or "Oh, whatever the hell that like squirrel thing with like a nut on its tail is." One of the interesting things about the way kimonos work is that they are explicitly described as a force of nature. And when they get enraged, you actually see them change their appearance. And then you also see an effect that it has on the area surrounding them. Like the king tusk, it's very much a cross between like a tree and a giant boar. And when it gets angry, it'll start like these like tree roots will start going all around it in like a giant circle kind of AoE. And then within those tree roots, you can see like these stumps like pop up, or you can see these jutted like giant tree roots that you have to you have to like, it's kind of like a wave AoE. So you have to like get like right up against it. Then once it falls down, like dodge in. So
You can see a
so on and
little
so
bit
forth.
of that at a high level on the King Tusk gameplay video.
Yeah, and it's really
It's hard
interesting
to
because
parse
even
it completely, but it's there.
yeah, the interesting thing is that even down to like the designs, like you can break the King Tusk's tusks, and when you break it, you can see that yeah, no, those tusks are just straight up trees. You like see they look like stumps when you break a tusk, and you can see like the tree rings and whatnot, and so on and so forth. Like I, there's definitely some janky aspects of it, but I don't know how old the build was, and it didn't really get in the way of anything. Like I will say, performance is not there yet. It does not look super hot, but it's an next gen exclusive, and obviously optimization is the last thing that gets done. Um, I will say that the preview build that we played, EA outright said that the minimum they recommended for the preview build was a 3060 Ti.
Holy shit. Okay.
Yeah, so obviously optimization to be done. I did
Uh-huh.
load it up on Steam Deck to see if I could get it running. It was like at like 20 FPS minimum settings. So it's like I'm confident that it will work on Steam Deck come launch because of optimization and whatnot. But more importantly, this game directly supports 16 by 10 resolutions. And you don't support 16 by 10 resolutions in this day and age unless explicitly you're trying to support Steam Deck.
If
Yeah.
my first computer monitor was 16 by 10, so I'm like, I feel like nostalgic. Like, oh, I remember these pillar box or not pillar boxing, these letter boxing from playing 16 by 9 games. So now when I was playing Cold Steel 4 on Steam Deck, it also was just 16 by 9. I'm like, I remember this.
Feels
Yeah.
good. Feels great. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, that sounds really promising. And it's like we've been saying, like just the release date is just around the corner, just a few months. Really can't wait to get my hands on it and try it out. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, hopefully we can get multiple copies so we
Yeah,
can like.
that'd be great. Like how we did in Sunbreak.
Yeah, that was honestly the best. Like
Yeah,
the
that was
most fun I
awesome.
had with a review in a long time.
Hmm.
But yeah, Wild Hearts is shaping up to be really promising. I'm excited to see what Koei Tecmo has left because, like, I'll say that like Token 2, like the main problem it had was obviously down to budget. Like they just did not have the budget, the resources to deal with it. But something like this, where like EA is footing much of the bill, and obviously it's a next gen exclusive, it's like, yeah, I think this has the chance to really be something special. And it seems like I'm far from the only one that feels that way. Because you look at the other previews, and most people are kind of saying the same things. This is like really got a lot of promise, and I'm excited to see how it shakes out once the full game releases in February.
They'll release minimum requirements in a tweet of like minimum requirements 4090 Ti. Let's go.
Part of me wants to get back into like Sunbreak because you mentioned that obviously very briefly here, but I might just wait for Wild Hearts. I don't know. I feel like I want to get back to Sunbreak out of obligation, but not out of genuine interest. But Wild Hearts I actually do because it is slightly a bit different. Maybe just wait until
we need to start preparing. We need to get ready. We need to start playing Fortnite and then getting to that building mindset.
Oh yeah, got to learn to craft and fight at the same time.
You shoot at one random 10-year-old, they gentrify the entire neighborhood.
Yeah. Watching Fortnite footage like that is like these kids are too cracked these days.
Mm-hmm. Going to the news front of this podcast, like I kind of said at the header, it's a bit of a hodgepodge here and not a whole lot in total. So this should be pretty brief. But a couple of this is a little bit of not actual newses, but teases and hints of things that might come to be. Because we spent a lot of the early part of the podcast talking about, obviously, Falcom and the Kiseki series, I'll go into a few bits of news on that front that we'll discuss here. So on an actual news front, the main headline from this week is that we had an update to Kuro no Kiseki II that basically adds like a new chapter to that game. Now, unlike James or Josh, I haven't been following Kuro as closely, so I don't know specifically the details of what the update includes that wasn't included in the base game. Though, however, you have a note here, Josh, saying that this confirms that there will be a third Kuro game due to the update. You were saying that after the second game, it seemed like it could have ended there.
Well, there's been like interviews with Kondo, before the Kuro 2 came out, him saying like this is basically concluding the arc, like saying that like they wanted to keep it, just wrap it up in this game. And then all of a sudden, like a new update came out for Kuro 2. I haven't actually seen like the specifics of it. Like I know how it's like accessed, like it's done like with a post game save or new game plus. A lot of it is like centered around like the VR sim, the Marchand Garten stuff, and like adding a new floor. And then they also, as part of this update, they made Fee and Zin playable as playable characters. Like, not like Central's main story stuff, but no, they were in the first Kuro, but not in this one until this update. But
that's strange. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's just like you can select them as playable characters, like in this like VR, like this basically VR simulator, essentially. But like there's also like new story stuff that I haven't seen, but people have taken screenshots like at the very end, no spoiler stuff, but like there's like a black screen that says Kuro no Kiseki : final chapter to be continued. So it pretty much says it either pretty much says like they're gonna add the final chapter via another maybe story update, or maybe it's a new game altogether. I'm thinking it's a new game altogether. So we'll see how that plays out. I guess it's interesting because like no spoilers obviously, but I felt that Kuro 2 ended pretty abruptly with how like the events like unfolded, and I'm just like, man, I really hope that's like it feels very like unsatisfying the way that it finished, in my opinion, and it felt very abrupt. So hopefully, if it is a new game, this Kuro no Kiseki final chapter, like they kind of course correct, in my opinion, of like making more like Kuro 1 over what they did with Kuro 2. That's what I'm crossing my fingers for. Because I still really like this cast and this arc. I just think there's just like a lot of weird decisions they made with Kuro to make it appeal more to past Trails players, for better and for worse. But we'll see how that plays out. So that's kind of like one of the big things that came out of that update. But as you were alluding to, and we were talking about like one of the big main central topics with this interview with A9VG, which is a Chinese outlet, a Twitter user named Hansuke21, who usually goes into these Chinese interviews and translates them on their Twitter. They talked a lot about the Trails in the Sky remake, because Kondo has talked about the possibility of remaking the Trails in the Sky games with their new engine that was used in Kuro 1 and Kuro 2. And he's aware that especially in the Asian and Japanese market, there's a lot of fond memories and deep connections with the Sky trilogy, and a lot of people really like that era of Falcom and the Trail series. And it's your very standard answer of like, if there's like a lot of people willing to support and buy it, like voice your support, well, we'll try to make it a reality, because it also has to appeal to.
Well, they're always going to equivocate to some extent, because they're not going to say no, we'll never do it, or promise that they will.
It's like, there's not the first time he's like mentioned this. He's like, he mentioned the possibility, like in a past interview, that like maybe we'll go in that direction next, of like maybe remaking these games. I'm thinking like, I don't know if I want those games remade, to be honest. I kind of like them the way they are, and I get it, like why they would feel the need to remake it, because like, especially in the West, like the platforms that they're currently released on is very limited. Like right now, like it's like still the PSP for the first 2 Sky games and PC, and then for Trails in the Third, it's only on PC. So because of the way that like licenses have played out, between Xseed and Nice and all that, like just releasing it on like modern platforms is kind of impossible at the moment, because Xseed doesn't have like, technically, I don't know if Falcom will let Xseed work on them to release them, because Nice technically only has the rights to Trails up to Cold Steel 3. They don't have the rights to Cold Steel 1 and 2. Xseed has those. So it's still such a mess. So I could see like the desire to like remake them and get them more in a uniform fashion, and like release them in a more uniform fashion, whether it be like like if they get a Western release, which I imagine it would if they did do that.
Yeah,
and how that would like,
normally. Sorry, go ahead. Finish with that.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
I was going to say that part of me is like, there's always a lot of fervor for remasters and remakes, but I'm kind of, normally I would say just let the game be representative of the era it released in. Like, it doesn't need to be remade. Like, a good game is a good game and will stand the test of times in most instances. This is one of the ones that, because the English publishing has been so storied, for lack of a better word, this is one of the ones where doing some sort of remake would give them that sort of fresh slate that there's a lot of benefit to, where they could get a game like on Switch or a modern console of some sort, depending on if this even happens. Again, this is Chrono Kiseki II is releasing at the end of the month in China. So that's kind of where this interview comes from. It's for the Chinese market, and then, like you said, was being translated into English just from this bilingual Twitter user. So not official marketing on the English front, but obviously stuff that we can glean from regardless. And yeah, like there's clearly a lot of interest both from the interviewee and Kondo himself about the potential for remaking the Sky games, because they everything is so interconnected for the series, and to not have that groundwork being readily available could be something that pays dividends just for the series as a whole once it's a complete product. And then this Hasuke21 does go on a few more of the other interview answers about like the other areas, the Kiseki universe, that haven't been touched on yet. I assume this is referring to like North Ambria and Remfuria and things like that. I do like this one. Again, this is an unofficial translation, but I do like this one question answer. Do you have any other plans to speed up the narrative story in the future as you finish the telling of the story of the Trail series? And Kondo replies in this translation, the pace of the entire plot can no longer be sped up. We are taking the overall plot one step at a time. I just like the wording of that. It can no longer be sped up. Which these games have always been a slow burn, so that's kind of the expected answer. But yeah, lots of cool insight here for those that have been really invested in the series since the beginning, for both the possibility of the Sky remakes and obviously where they're going to be going once the Kuro trilogy wraps up.
Yep, and then he's just once again mentioning that the current progress in the overall Trail series is like roughly 70% done. So we're almost there. We're getting.
We got 4 or 5 more games,
maybe.
Well, from a Japanese standpoint, from an English standpoint, we're at like 8.
Yes, but sure. Like, I just hope I have to imagine next year's game for Falcom will be that new East project because they already have like the teaser out, and I assume that next year will be East, and then I assume after year after that, well, they'll go back to Trails, unless they surprise us and like say, hey, we're actually gonna make something new and not just East and Trails. Maybe
Tokyo Xanadu.
I don't know. I still need to play that. Is it like someone needs to convince me that Tokyo Xanadu is worth playing?
Adam, is it worth playing?
It has good music.
Okay,
that is true. That's good music. The one thing I will say about Tokyo Xanadu that really kind of whiplashed me when I played it is that it is a game that is so much just an amalgamation of every other fucking game that Falcom's made. It is a game that it's like it doesn't really have anything to stand on of its own. It's literally just every single plot point, every single thing that the game does, it directly ribs from another Falcom game that came out previously.
honestly, like the Falcom thing that I'm most excited for the most is Geofront's translation of Dinosaur Resurrection. That's kind of the game I want to play.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too. I mean, hey, it's a dungeon RPG. Like,
it's a first-person dungeon crawler, which is not something that you think of when you hear the title Dinosaur Resurrection from Falcom.
Yeah,
I've never heard of this game.
It's really cool.
Falcom, if you're gonna, Falcom, if you're gonna remake some of your early to late 2000s tier PSP ports, maybe you can consider the fact that you did a remake for a certain game called Brandish. Brandish the Dark Revenant was really good. More people should play it. Where's Brandish 2 remake, Kondo? I'm no longer asking.
There's like, is it going to sell 1 billion copies to keep the company afloat?
I was saying on Twitter, but like, especially like looking back on it, I don't think there's a single like bad game that Falcom published on the PSP.
You might be right. I have to think about it, but you might be right.
On a kind of similar front of hoping for remasters or remakes of now classic games, this is, as of October of 2022, the 10-year anniversary in Japan of the original release of Bravely Default, and of course the subsequent Bravely Default series. So I didn't hear about this until literally just before this podcast started, but unsurprisingly, there was a 10th anniversary celebration event where Square Enix held a broadcast called Asano Team Development Radio Room Bravely Default Celebrates 10th Anniversary. And unsurprisingly, at events like this, typically we might want to see or hear about, potential plans for the future. Well, apparently during this event, nothing was officially announced, but however, we did see that a new version of the opening movie of Bravely Default was shown in like the new Bravely engine. I don't know if it's the same one that was used for like the CGs of Bravely Default 2. And then following up from that, Josh, you seem to imply that not only does this movie itself kind of speak for kind of reference to the original game, but some suggestion from Asano team that they are considering a Bravely Default remaster.
Yeah, like they basically remastered the opening movie of the first Bravely Default game, and like that's a weird thing to show off. But Sal Romano of Gematsu translated Asano's comments of it, and I'll just read that from his article, saying, "Over the past 10 years, our team has grown larger and our capacity has increased. Looking at the opening movie of the first Bravely Default, he's like, I feel like announcing a remaster of Bravely Default would be the best possible thing and something fans would desire. But for now, I'm unfortunately unable to announce anything like that. For now, let's just say." So, Asano is basically saying we're working on it, but we can't announce it officially, or else Square Enix is gonna, not be happy with that. So I think it's
an interesting way to word that, where it's like the best thing would be to announce right here the remaster that everyone wants. Yeah, that would be swell.
Monkey's Paw Curls. We get a Bravely Default remaster. It's in the Bravely Default 2 art style.
Say that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't hate it. It's just like I would like it just to be a cleaner, sharper version of what Bravely Default 1 looked like on the 3DS.
I'm kind of in the same boat. Like I appreciate Bravely Default 2 for being just trying something different, but I just think I do like
it's very charming. It's a very charming, it's a very charming art style that they use for the first Bravely Default. Like the chibi characters that have like pointy feet. It's just like, and it looks really, really funny in motion. You put it to max fast forward speed. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty inevitable, I would say. I'm not obviously it's not official yet, but it feels inevitable that they would go in this direction. And that's cool. I mean, the first Bravely Default game is
probably
fun.
the most popular.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's fun, and hopefully, they find ways to kind of iron out like the last stretch of the game and what they did with that to make it a less repetitive experience. But it's still a very fun game to play through. So it's re-releasing that for a bigger audience, on multiple platforms would be fantastic.
Another Square Enix property that we got a couple of news bits here is, not surprisingly, we've talked about this game several times, Star Ocean: The Divine Force. We probably won't spend a lot of time here because we've had several occasions to talk about this. But the reason why it's interesting this week is that early on in the marketing cycle, and Josh or Adam, those of you that are more in the day-to-day news coverage than I am, it felt like early on in the marketing cycle for the Divine Force, everything was very, very like measured and metered and organized, where we get like a character trailer, then we get a mission report. There wasn't a lot of delay between the English and Japanese media releases, and then it just sort of felt like things kind of got away from them, because now we've gotten some character trailers for some characters that were introduced in the mission reports. This is Malkia and the new Kenny officer. I forget her first name. So we didn't have character trailers for those two, but now we have them in Japanese and not in English. And now we finally got the fourth mission report from the Square Enix official English YouTube that was originally in Japanese several weeks ago. So it's kind of like old news, but new news. So it just kind of feels like the closer we get to Star Ocean: The Divine Force's release, the less ready it almost seems like. It just seems like it's coming in really hot. And even like the marketing it feels like it's been hard to follow. And that's on top of learning about the Tri-Ace financials from a few weeks ago. So got a couple new basically trailers, some in English, some in Japanese for the mission report 4 and the new character trailers, but I don't really know that it actually contains a lot of new information has a lot to dig into here.
Yeah, I mean the one that we got in English, obviously it talks about shows a little bit the crafting system and how fucked up that looks like already, with like different characters having different specialties. So, but they don't really go too in depth with like how everything works in crafting. It's just like basically a very, very basic outline of how it works. And once people start digging into the crafting system, seeing like what the potential is there, and like maybe how you can blow the game wide open with it. So that's the hope and dream of all Star Ocean fans.
Adam,
they show off the board game, the Esoa board game, a little bit, and introducing that. That'll be like a fun mini game that people can participate in. I know I'm probably gonna like go deep into that. It looks like something for me. So who knows if I'll ever finish the new Star Ocean because of that mini board game. The funny thing that got a laugh out of me is like there's like these things called like private events, I think, in the game. And like they had like a very like simple conversation of like, oh, like there's like this space that we have. How should we decorate it? Should we decorate it like with flowers? Should we decorate it like this, or leave it as is? And then like the narrator, the trailer's like, depending on how you answer these events, it'll affect the game's ending. I'm like, wait, what? It'll affect the game's ending by answering how you decorate this thing. And I know like what you're gonna get to, Adam. Like it maybe like it'll maybe add like a character, like a mini character scene to like the ending events.
Because yeah, like, how recent Star Ocean games have worked. Actually, not even recent. Star Ocean 2 is like this too. Is that like you have like an ending, which is just like the ending. It's only one ending, but then you kind of get like attached to it. Like, which character did you have the highest affinity with? You kind of get like their little bonus scene. And then sometimes you can get like more than one if you do it right. So I'm assuming just something like that. Where you're
a lot of Western RPGs do a very similar thing.
Yeah.
It's like what happened to this place based on your choice. Like, oh, here's a shot of whoever's apartment, and you decided to plant the sunflower and not the ivy or whatever.
But it's really funny. It's like the first thing you think of, like if you don't like know about the Star Wars series, the first thing you think is like, oh my god, there's all these sorts of different endings of like if I choose the wrong option, I won't get the true ending.
It kind of conjures like your imagination of like, how dare you decorate this building with leaves? You ruined the universe. Some sort of like universe changing, ending changing event from like
You
decorating
poisoned the
something.
entire town, and now they don't exist, and now the universe is done for. Good job, player. So,
And by the way, the character name that I forgot was Marielle L. Kenny. So she first showed up in one of the mission reports, along with that armored character that I don't believe we have a name for yet. There was like
JJ.
Oh yeah, JJ. That's what it was.
Yeah, it was like in some the Tokyo Game Show
Gameplay
trailer.
footage, but not introduced. Like, who the hell is this?
Yeah, they started introducing them more formally in the Japanese trailers. Like we learned JJ like voiced by Kuroda, which is the voice of Kiryu, and that's really fun in the Japanese voice cast for that game. So that's this is one of those. It's like, well, I guess I have to play this game in Japanese now because I have to hear how Kiryu voices a cyber samurai android that has like Japanese samurai armor on them. Sure.
I will say that when I watched the mission report for in English, the voice acting that you're witnessing there just feels better than it does in the character trailers. Because for these character trailers, they're only like 50 seconds long. They just take a bunch of like dialogue out of context, which all trailers do that to some extent. But I just feel like for some, it's like better just composited, better put together on the mission reports. They're more long form and less trying to be like. I guess the character trailers are short and trying to be like soundbitey, which for some reason I guess doesn't work as well. I don't know, I'll probably play this in English because I'm a masochist, but Kuroda is one of the few Japanese voices that I can just like call like, no, I recognize that just from ear, just because of having played all the
it's definitely one of like the most like oddly enough, like one of the most like recognizable like voices like internationally. Like it's just like no matter where you're from, like once you hear it and like you played a good amount of like Yakuza games or like seen a lot of Yakuza videos, like you're just like, oh, that's the voice character Kiryu.
Let's see, what else did we get this week? Just cover a few random trailers and newsletters. We did get an info dump for Atelier Ryza 3, which is releasing next February. Now, some of this I feel like we knew. The main crux of this info dump is talking about the new playable characters of this game. I have not played 1 and 2, but I believe that at least one of these is a fan favorite character, which is it Dose? What's his name again? Bose. Yeah, and then along with 3 other characters, who is Dien, and then we have Frederica and Kala. I don't know if these are returning characters or not, just because I'm not familiar with the series. But
I think they're new. Besides Bose, this is the first time Bose is going to be a playable character in this installment of Ryza. But the other 3, I think they're all brand new, right, James?
Yeah, Bose is a character from the previous games. I don't think the other 2 were in the others.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's new characters.
Yeah, they're all new characters.
All right.
So I think a lot of people are waiting for the Atelier Ryza 1 cast to show back up in this one, like with Impel, and I think I forgot the other name. But a lot of people seem to be anticipating them coming back. But for now, they just announced like all the new playable characters. And then, like for Europe, they announced some of the physical collector's editions, like the premium box and special collection box, and then a whole bunch of new screenshots. And then people who have save data from the previous Atelier Ryza games, they can dress up the cast with the costumes they wore in the past games. And if they have save data from Atelier Sophie 2, they can dress up Ryza as Sophie in Ryza 3.
All right, I want to show you how ignorant I am on this. I feel bad. I was reading the press release, and it's like, the game follows fan favorite alchemist, Resolin Stout. And I'm like, who? Wait, what? Ryza is a nickname? Like, who the hell is that? Who's Resolin?
Yeah, that's one of the first things they say, like in the first game. It's like, my name is Resolin Stout, but people call me Ryza for short, or something like that.
All right. I'm like, who the hell is this? All right, today I learned.
There you go.
But yeah, we got new character art for this, and as well as a shit ton of screenshots. Part of my language, but even from a distance, all this character art I think is really charming and really cool and well put together. So it's fun even just to witness those as we get them up on the site and get those shared before the game releases. It just looks really clean and visually appealing. We got a new Pokemon update. And this is kind of a silly one. And the way they introduce this, it feels like they are taking a we mentioned that it seems like they're kind of at the general cadence of announcing one new Pokemon a week or so, which they've been kind of holding to. But the way that they do it seems to be kind of in a different context every time. Gym leaders named Iono, basically, who is a streamer influencer type, kind of give like a faux streaming kind of preview of guess who my Pokemon partner is. No, it's not Pikachu.
This is where we're
no,
at in
it's not
Pokemon
Magnemite.
now. You have gym leaders being influencers, VTubers, YouTubers. It's just
I've seen a few like memes where it's like 20 years ago you had martial artist, you had soldier, you had and now it's streamer, influencer, or whatever.
I mean, that's where it is. Like Tekken, Julia is like a streamer influencer now in Tekken. So, that's where we are at.
But the
modern age.
Iono, I don't think is that interesting. Very, very kind of typical character archetype.
Yeah, shark teeth.
Yeah. Garagura, is that like the shark teeth?
I don't know. You're the one who knows more about VTubers than I do, so I trust your judgment.
Oh, okay. But the more important thing here is that we were introduced to Bellibolt, who is my new best friend. So Bellibolt is an electric type Pokemon that is basically just a giant squishy green blob that has like almost like this is going to be a very strange comparison, but the basilisks in Dark Souls that have like those giant like venom sacs on their face that is not their eyes. Well, Bellibolt reminds me of that because it has like two fake like toad eyes sticking out from its head, but then it has just like a derpy ditto face in the front that's always smiling. That is his actual face. But yeah, Bellibolt is very, very cute, very very derpy looking, and I enjoy a good derp. So this one's my new best friend. I did actually pre-order Scarlet and Violet, the dual pack. It'll be my first Pokemon game in like 20 years, or when did Platinum come out? Long time ago. Well, not including Arceus, I guess. But Bellibolt, if at all possible, I'm gonna get him on my final team. He'll be on my Victory Road commemoration.
Hell and high water, you will have Bellibolt.
Yeah, he's gonna be my sweeper. I don't know. I don't even know how he's built or what his base stats.
Make your dreams a reality.
It's just kind of cool.
You're gonna go picnics with Bellibolt. You're gonna wash up Bellibolt. You're gonna feed a sandwich.
Yeah, in the gameplay footage, like he shows him taking a bath and all that other stuff. I have no idea like what his abilities or base stats or anything like actually meaningful is, but just that he's cute and I want to use him, which is the true essence of Pokemon.
It says Bellibolt's ability, Electromorphosis, is a new ability appearing the first time in these titles. Bellibolt becomes charged when hit by an attack, boosting the power of the next electric type move it uses. There it is.
I don't even know like the Smogon terms for like what the different roles Pokemon play in a party, but hopefully that fits one of them well. Tanky something, kind of like a Wobbuffet counter Pokemon. I don't know. He's more of a gimmick. I don't know shit about Pokemon. If you know a lot about Pokemon and I'm frustrating you, I'm sorry. But Bellibolt's my new friend.
There you go. I'm happy for you. You found your spiritual animal, Pokemon.
Mm-hmm. We got a small newsletter update for Theatrhythm Final Bar Line. Obviously, this was announced not too long ago for Nintendo Switch and PS4 next year, coming out in February. We talked a bit about the just the song list and what the whole song list contains of and what you can access if you pre-order versus not pre-order. At the time, forget the exact context, but James had basically said based on, what was it, James? I'm sorry that I'm stumbling on this, but
people found a tweet from a developer on the project that pointed out that there was a digital deluxe upgrade option and it would be available for physical copies. So we technically knew this, and it was like, from what we could tell it was somebody that legitimately was the developer. It was just in Japanese, and it wasn't an official statement. So even though it was probably true, this is now the first time that we had actual confirmation.
It was all but confirmed, basically. And what that is that there are no, correct me if I'm wrong, there are no soundtracks or songs that are locked behind a deluxe edition pre-order or anything like that. You can get the base game.
Yeah, you can get the base game and then upgrade it to say you got the physical copy of Theatrhythm Final Bar Line, and you want the songs that are only available in the deluxe edition, like digital deluxe edition. They can buy an upgrade to get those additional songs. They're not barred from it in any way, shape, or form. And like the Square Enix Twitter account finally confirmed that earlier this week. This was like after like the news drop of like the detailing the series quests, endless world, multi battles, and stuff like that. So just shortly after it, but yeah, it's just like nice to have official confirmation, even though it's like mentioned offhand by a developer, just having it be acknowledged by the official, outlet, the official, the official Twitter. It's like, okay, like people can rest easy and they can actually have like, feel good about buying this game physically and not being barred off from like any digital deluxe editions being exclusive from them or anything like that. So yeah,
And
I mean
like,
the news this week just is basically just detailing like, hey, like like there's these series quests in the game, like they can choose like a Final Fantasy title, and then they can unlock more songs like and characters by playing through that specific like title in the game. So like it's just because like it's just a series of like songs from the game and like being able to get stuff from that. So basically giving you like a progression method to unlock more content in the game, which is nice. Like it's not like overwhelming the character the player from the get-go. It's like you can like play through like them and gradually unlock stuff for the game, which I like. I like feeling good, like being able to unlock characters that I like from the Final Fantasy games that I like. So it's for people like me who like unlocking stuff in their games gradually. Um, there's the endless world, which is like a survival mode in the game, which is it'll feed you songs endlessly until you fail 3 quests, and then it's over. And then it gets more difficult the more songs you do. The multi-battle stuff is fun. I imagine it'll be a lot of fun with friends. You can play up to 4 players, which they mentioned when they announced the game. But then like they have like these bursts in the game where as you play through the song, you gradually fill this burst meter, and then you can like send shit to your friends and other players in that game session. So like one of the screenshots they showed off was like you can send off a dual 2 fat chocobo to a player to like obstruct their vision on incoming notes. Just like fun stuff like that, or like you can have like really nasty stuff where like you'll freeze points from players, and the only way they can accrue points when they have this is like they have to get criticals and rainbow criticals, which is basically like perfect notes, um, and so forth. So it's just like fun stuff like that. And then they're saying like the incentive to play multiplayer is like you get like these collect the cards after a session, and then like obviously whoever wins that session gets first dib on their cards. So it's like basically like a card collection that you can build up through multiplayer and stuff like that. Just and then more just showing off screenshots of the game and songs. But it's not a big update, but it's like it's a meaningful full one for people who are excited for the game, like James and I. Yeah, just seeing like what can you do in this game. There's so much like songs. What like how can you engage? What are the different ways you can play this game? And
More to
just
it than the average rhythm game arcade port.
yeah. So that's a lot of fun. I like that aspect of the 3DS game, where like you can like level up your characters and like even like equip them with like weapons and stuff. So like giving them like an RPG slant. Because the thing that I like all about these rhythm games is like there's like a progression method. It's not just like a mindless like, hey, like play these in set order, and then you unlock the next song, and then you play that song, and then you unlock the next song. Like it's like your typical rhythm game um progression, which like I appreciate on some level, but I like having like it getting like an RPG progression method in these sorts of games.
Yeah, thank you so much for bailing me out on that, because like the only experience that I have with a rhythm game is I did play a tiny bit of Melody of Memory, and then after like playing a couple of songs, I ended up just like Googling the final cutscene of that game and not actually playing it. So I do own that on Epic Store of all things. So I might just
Yeah,
poke
that's
at
right.
that. I also own the other Kingdom Hearts games on Epic. Maybe so
But
when
yeah,
we finally learn more about. Go
if
ahead.
you like an RPG like progression method, like you just don't want the standard like rhythm game like how it unlocks like Melody of Memory, like honestly like maybe Theatrhythm Final Bar Line like might be a cool way to engage with that because of these series quests. Like you can go through like titles and like the most iconic music from them, and then you unlock characters from that specific title. So like say like FF6, You know, you can go right
Well,
away
actually,
into like 276 and getting like
now that I think
Locke,
about it,
Stelis, Terra.
you know what my most recent experience with the rhythm game was? The
What?
dancing minigame in Lost Judgment.
There you go.
Yeah, that compared to what they had in Yakuza 5, that was actually pretty robust. I have no idea how it compares to a quote unquote real one, but the one in Yakuza 5 was pretty bare bones. One in Lost Judgment was I don't know, I liked it. I enjoyed it.
It was very robust because like you got to like set like your dance routine and like you unlock the new moves and like you get to see like unique animations of seeing like Yagami just like busting out like different outfits, like different like breakdancing moves and all that sort of stuff. You're just like, all right, sure, I guess. He doesn't sing, but he does have he can dance.
I like how they're like, how you can dance? Like, well, I know kung fu, and this is just kind of like that. Like, oh, okay, I buy that.
That's right. As a justification, like, yes, of course. Obviously, if you're good at kung fu, you're a good dancer.
Only three minor bits of news here to kind of end the podcast on. One of these is more inherently interesting than the other. We did get a new trailer for an upcoming Switch roguelike called Sea Horizon. This is coming out for Switch soonish. Yeah, October 20th.
It comes out for us on Switch first on October 20th, and then coming to PlayStation, Xbox sometime next year.
Yeah, and it's already on PC as early access. I don't know if they've announced details on when it's going to come out of early access, if that's going to coincide with the Switch launch or not. I don't have a lot of interest in the roguelikes, but it has obviously had an audience, at least on PC. We got a new trailer that we put up on the site that focuses on some of the player characters, including Dylan, and then Lyra, and the last one is Shylin.
Or Laya. I don't know how to
pronounce it. Oh, I just my brain just corrected that to say something else. No, it is Lyya, Laya. I just like my brain is like, it has to say Lyra. Nope, Laya. Yep. So yeah, that's coming out before the end of the month on Switch, and then later next year, next year later on other consoles. We got a release date for the PC release of Relayer under the Relayer Advanced label. Relayer released on Sony consoles earlier this year in March that Josh covered for us. And then obviously alongside the PC release, the existing console version will get an update that coincides along with that. It will release on October 27th. It will also come out on GOG later in November. The three major changes coming to Relayer Advanced is that there'll be an option to change the map layout. What does this mean, Josh? It says from the usual square grids to luminous lines.
Yeah, you see it out there. Like Kite posted this, and like you see it in the screenshot, the Relayer Advanced new features. And the first one, that's how it usually looks. And then the second and third screenshots, like this is how it's gonna look like now. You can obviously you can toggle it, but I guess it's better, like for sure, because like you saw with the typical grid lines, it can get pretty messy with like if you're gonna move into like enemy territory where like you actually trigger the AI or you don't, and then like seeing like what the ranges are for the weapons. So with the new one, it's like more quote unquote fluid. I guess it's better. It has better readability. Than
the old one is more like a standard grid based like RPG Maker game. Where the new I always feel silly when I invoke comparisons like this, but the new one looks like when you do view like enemy movement on Fire Emblem game, where it gives you like the border outline of you can move here, the enemy can move here. These are the areas where your movement.
It's more pronounced, yeah. It's more pronounced and easier to read. So that's a welcome one. The second change coming to this is like they say the main story will have shorter conversations for more concise storytelling. The full conversation will still be available via the recollections menu. I'm like, to me, that seems worse. I kind of like having like the conversations between the characters. And when I played it earlier this year, I liked like that they just had like conversations about like just more casual stuff. It's not like not always pushing the storytelling forward. It's just like you kind of get a better sense of like their characterization and like the stuff that they like and how they just. It's kind of a weird change. I don't know if I like it.
Yeah, that's not something we normally see, where it's just like we decided to take an additional editing pass specifically on making the conversation shorter, but we'll put the old conversations in a menu for you. It's a bit unorthodox.
Yeah, I don't know if I like that. I'd have to like see it in action, seeing like where they actually decided to like make this change. I don't know. To me, that may hurt the game potentially. To be honest, like if they make it so like it's like a toggleable option to like just have like it be how it was originally, I think I'd be fine. But for them to say that like, oh, the full conversation will still be available in the recollections menu, that means that you have to like go back into like an archive of like seeing these scenes again. It's like that's kind of weird and maybe not great. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. The other changes said it's like, hey, there's new high difficulty end game content, which is like 5 stages and features like phantoms, just like doppelgangers of like the cast, which is like that's so far off. And like like when I originally reviewed this game, I said like how they implemented the post game is already weird and like kind of a detriment to the game, where like the game ends in a pretty emotional note that I really like. It's kind of like one of the more stronger endings I've seen into a video game this year. And the post game is like you go into it. It's like a simulator of like what if like the ending didn't happen and like things just happened like in the best way possible. And they just
This is ringing a bell. Yeah, I remember you talking about this.
Yeah, and like that, and like it feels super weird and out of place, and kind of it's basically just like kind of like what if like the end, like the cool ending, like cool emotional ending didn't happen, and like you just continue to your voyage.
You know, another game had this issue.
What?
Tokyo's Antidote.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh my god!
I won't get into specifics, but there's the ending, and then there's like the post game, which sort of undoes a little bit of the ending. And then there was like the X version new stuff, which undid even more of it, and it just kind of makes it happier and happier. And just kind of like,
I don't. Yeah, it
feels like having your cake and eating it too, where it's like you have a poignant, sort of bittersweet ending, and then it's like, nope, actually everything is perfect.
So like it's oddly enough like my recommendation to people like playing this for the first time is like once you finish the story, like give it a few like I don't know days or weeks, and like if you want to play more, definitely go play more of the post game. But it's like it's nothing really meaningful because it's like kind of like it's kind of like, hey, what if we just did more of the stuff that we did? And like the post game stages aren't like really even that interesting anyway, in my opinion. Like I played a little bit of it. I didn't play all of it, but it's just like it was kind of like whatever. But I think the more meaningful stuff for me is like all the systems that they added like after I completed that game. Like they added more systems. So like they added a system in which you can upgrade the mechs, and like that's a big one. That's a big one because there was no way to really like upgrade the mechs like and tweak their numbers and upgrade their whatever. So like they added like new like upgrade systems to that well after I was like done with the game. Like maybe I should go play it again, maybe not, I don't know. But I'm just so weirdly still baffled by like them like trimming the conversations in the main story, because like those are like that's part of like the main story that I liked, because of like them just kind of like just hanging around and like having fun with each other and enjoying each other's company. And it's like that's such a weird change. Like I don't know if I'd like that. I have to see it. I have to see like before and after, and like I'm most assuredly that I'm gonna get pissed off at the after. Most assuredly. So I'd have to go see it how they do it. Yeah, I wish they just did a toggle like they did with like
that reminds me that's what it was.
Well, like
no, it's not a toggle.
Well, that puts something else into a context where I mentioned early on that this update's coming to PS4 and 5. So it's like that's strange in that context where they're like, if you update this patch, we're going to shorten the dialogues. It's like I don't want to update or whatever.
No, that's not. It's not a toggle. According to them, it's like if you want to see the full conversations, you just have to see it through the recollections menu, which is like an archive, of like the cutscenes. So it's just like what?
I'm trying to think of this practically. Like, how would this actually work when you're playing the game? You watch a scene, it takes a few minutes, and you're like, all right, time to rewatch it.
Yeah, it's like, that's not great.
You have to watch each scene twice, and then you have to pick out like what was cut out. I don't know.
Strange stuff.
But yeah, that's kind of the PC release is coming on October 27th, and then they'll also sell it on GOG on November 10th. So the Steam release is coming October 27th, and then on GOG it'll come later on November 10th. Just okay, sure, why not? But I'm happy that like this will be coming to like a bigger audience.
I think and that update patch will be the update patch for the console versions will be November 18th. So just kind of rolling it out across.
Yeah,
it's strange,
weird, but hopefully people like it. And hopefully it didn't. Man, I don't know. Hopefully they didn't cut out like the stuff that I like of the main story of like too much. I guess it's so weird because like people are gonna like a lot of people are like not gonna like see like maybe some of like the cooler, funnier lines and like how the cast interacts with each other. Like it just I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. Like it's weird to think that like people will go like their first playthroughs of this game to like potentially like miss out a lot of like the more amusing parts of like the main story. I don't know. That's so weird.
Well, this last bit of news is almost equally weird. And this is something that I feel like someone might have called, but I still don't think we were
This is
expecting
not
it.
weird.
And
This is definitely like okay,
no,
yeah.
not weird.
This is definitely
Okay,
par for
so
the course.
all right, so we're going into a period of the year where we have a lot of Final Fantasy VII projects coming through. We learned obviously about Reunion. We've got the Crisis Core remaster coming out. But one thing that had already released late last year, in case you remember, is the mobile battle royale Final Fantasy VII: The First Soldier. None of us here, I don't think, really touched it except Scott, I believe, in a very small way. But we have learned, it has been announced that Final Fantasy VII: The First Soldier will shut down on January 11th, 2023.
Games
So
as a service.
it first launched in November of last year. So this is, 14 months or so, just under 14 months of service.
Yeah, I mean,
I still find it very funny that I just was like jump scared with a random package from Square Enix's mobile division, like seeing like basically saying, "Hey, here's this new Final Fantasy VII spinoff on mobile. Please cover it. Please cover it. We know it's not an RPG. Please cover it."
I mean,
A year later.
they were chasing the PUBG mobile money with this game, and literally did not pan out. And like, it's weird because like the last time I seen this game in motion is like when I was looking through YouTube one day, like they were randomly live streaming a tournament for this game, and I'm like, what the fuck does that look like? And it was like whatever, I guess. And then they were like having like an interview with like an esports team, like a Final Fantasy VII, the First Soldier esports team. Think about that. And they're like, "What's your strategy for like the next match coming up?" It's like, "Oh yeah, you know, we'll be doing what we do best, and all that. Whatever beef they have with the other team." And it's like, okay, whatever.
I'm imagining putting out all the usual like sporting platitudes, like, "Yeah, we're going to take it one match at a time. We're going to believe in ourselves, and we trust the process," or whatever.
It's just like this is like a big surprise, I guess. I guess it didn't find its like intended market. I don't know how big it was like in other territories. Clearly, like PUBG Mobile, like it's very popular like in Asian territories, from what I understand. And maybe they just didn't latch on. It's like, no, fuck you. We're gonna keep on playing PUBG Mobile. This shit's dope. All I remember for this game, the most amusing collaboration that this game had, for FF7: The First Soldiers, there was this Japanese rock band called Man with a Mission, and like one of their shticks is like they put on like animal masks over them, like so like any music video, any album cover that they release, like they have like furry like masks over their heads as they like fucking rock out. And that's that they put out really really great songs, for some of the most like iconic music, like for some of the more like popular anime, like Golden Kamuy and Vinland Saga and stuff like that. So I mean, they're very very popular, but it's like it was really funny that they collabed with FF7: The First Soldier. It's like one of those collabs like almost made me want to like install it. I'm like, this is so fucking weird. I gotta maybe I'll try it. I didn't, but it really amused me.
And I remember going to Nova Crystallis. One of the things that Tony Garso does over there is like this week in games for like Square Enix properties. A lot of it is focused on like updates to Final Fantasy 14 and things like that. Obviously, the updates to Final Fantasy 11 and a couple of other properties. But there was also a section like this week in Final Fantasy 7: The First Soldier. I'm like, all right, so they were like regularly updating this. I don't know like how meaningful it was, but it was my first
They have a
reminder
Halloween
that game
event coming up for that game. Like they're still gonna support it till like it's shut down. Like I know they're gonna have like a Halloween event for FF7: The First Soldier, and get all your Halloween cosmetics for like your cool soldier dude.
But if it came out on PC, I could see myself like trying it, but it never did. It said as a mobile project, and that's where it didn't latch on.
That's where it'll stay. That's where it'll die.
Apparently.
I mean, like, best of luck to, like, hopefully, like, no one was let go, or internally, hopefully they're just getting shuffled to other projects. Best of luck to the developers on this. Because this took a lot of manpower to get off the ground, obviously. So hopefully, if the developers are just getting shuffled around to maybe bigger, better projects that that they'll latch onto, and yeah.
All right, we do have one last thing that we want to talk about here. Not a news story in the normal sense, but something that is one thing that we wanted to at least mention here at the closing of this podcast. And I'll hand it over to James for this.
So people listening to this podcast have probably already heard about what happened earlier this week. I just wanted to mention it and give my condolences to his family and friends, because even though, like, Scott from the Geofront that worked on the Trails from Zero and Trails to Zero fan translations, even though we had our differences near the end, we were friends at one point, and regardless of anything else, just dying so young is heartbreaking. And I just say something. It's like,
it's understandable.
Yeah, I mean, we should just, like, be upfront about it. Like, there's a GeoFund member, Scott Tijerina, I believe is sorry if I'm mispronouncing the last name, but they sadly passed away, earlier this week, and like, Scott will be remembered in the RPG community, obviously, for his contribution to the GeoFront translation project. He had a YouTube channel called Kill Scott Kill. I know a lot of people, visited his YouTube videos, had a lot of passion for the Trails series. He was also an editor, I believe, on the Blue Archive mobile game as well, the translation for that. So
I saw some conversation around his death, with people saying that he was, like, the person that really pushed for, like, a re-edit of an event when it came back or something, which is, like, something, like, completely unprecedented. Like, he was, if nothing else, he was a dude that, like, wore his passion on his sleeve and would intensely fight for whatever he thought was right. And it's just an absolute fucking shame that he didn't get to stay around long enough to see what else he could accomplish.
I mean, yeah, he's definitely one of the reasons that, like, people, like, get to experience, like, the Crossbell series in the West. It's more than we could ever ask for. More. So it's like, it's a really, really big shame to, like, let go. And
we all hope we can have an impact like that, when we pass on. So rest in peace, Scott, and thanks for all your contributions in this space.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott. So yeah, best of luck to, like, just friends, colleagues, family, relatives. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's way too young. Way too young. Really, really, really sad news to see in the week.
And closing out on that small moment of silence, that ends our coverage for the Tetracast this week. It was really cool to kind of see us talk about the Kiseki series in a lot of different contexts, with Nayuta, with Cold Steel, and with Kuro 2 updates, and potentially remakes on that front. All the Square Enix stuff that we're moving into. Obviously, Xenoblade is now back on our mind with the DLC starting to roll out. Yeah, and if you've made it to the end of the podcast, let us know how we're doing. You can listen to us whether you're listening to us on Spotify, Google, or on the YouTube channel. Let us know what you think and give us some feedback, and we'll act on that. You can also go to rpgsite.net to look at any of the news stories that we've talked about, including James's Wild Hearts preview feature. You can also find RPG Site on the social media channels. Just search for RPG Site on Twitter, Facebook, and the like, and you should be able to find us. And also go ahead and join our Discord if you're interested. Discord.gg/RPG Site. We'll also have a link in the comments of our YouTube video. So go ahead and join if that's of interest to you. And we'll be back next week with some of the things that are, as we roll into the end of October. We've got a Persona PC release coming out in the next 5 days.
I like how you keep calling it Persona PC release when it's also coming to, like, Switch.
I guess that's
Xbox,
my bias.
Your
that's my bias coming through.
Persona PC.
I'm sorry. All right, Persona 5 is coming out.
I love it.
Multi-platform. So yeah, that's my bias. Thanks for calling me out. That's some cold medicine, Adam. But yeah, we've got that coming out next week, and then obviously not too long after that, all the other releases that we've been kind of hyping up for a bit here. Look forward to the discussion on that, and we've got a couple things in the works that we're eager to share with you guys. Until you hear from us next time, stay safe and take care. And we'll talk to you then.